Hi, everyone. Welcome to Fueling Minds and Bodies, the Transformative Impact of School Breakfast, hosted by the Food Research and Action Center. I'm Steve Hayward, FRAC's Communications Manager. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few brief housekeeping items. We expect this webinar to run about 60 minutes. We are recording the presentation and will send the recording and slides in a follow-up email. Closed captioning is available. To turn captions on, click Show CC in the bottom taskbar and select English as the spoken language. At the end of the presentation, we'll have time for questions and answers. To ask a question at any time, please use the Q&A tab, also in the bottom taskbar. With that, I'll pass it off to Erin Heisem, Senior Child Nutrition Policy Analyst at FRAC. Take it away, Erin.
Thanks, Steve, and welcome everyone to FRAC's Thursday webinar on the importance of school breakfast. Next slide, please. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with FRAC, we are a national nonprofit organization working to end hunger here in the United States. We do that through three main ways: research, training and technical assistance, and advocacy at the federal, state, and local level. Next slide, please. So I'm so excited to be here today in a panel of breakfast champions to really talk about this transformative impact of school breakfast and how important school breakfast is for students' health and learning. I'm going to set the stage a little bit, going over some research on the benefits of school breakfast, talking about participation trends over the last few years, and those best practices that make sure all kids have access to a nutritious start to their school day. Then I'm going to pass it over to our partner, Katie Bombach from the National Dairy Council, so Katie can dive into the nutrition regulations and the nutrition standards around school breakfast. But we want to highlight or spend the most of today talking with our panel of experts. Katie is going to be joined by Patty Barker from the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance and Holly Best, the Food Service Director for Wood County Schools in West Virginia. At any point throughout the webinar, if you have a question for me, Katie, or any of our panelists, please use that Q&A function that Steve mentioned, and we'll get to it at the end of our panel discussion. We'll wrap up today's webinar showing some resources, both from National Dairy Council, as well as some FRAC resources that may help you expand your breakfast operations. Next slide, please. So I'm sure many of you on this call today already know how important school breakfast is to students' health and to their academic outcomes. There is a plethora of research out there that correlates strong school breakfast programs with improvements in students' diet, with protected health outcomes, as well as improved learning and academic outcomes. We hear from teachers all the time when schools implement strong breakfast programs where all children have access to breakfast and they eat it in community, in the classroom with their peers. We see improvements in behavior, attendance, alertness. There's reduced visits to the school nurse, and all of this correlates to improved learning. We've seen research that correlates strong school breakfast programs to improved test scores, math and reading test scores. We also know that schools across the country are struggling with school avoidance or chronic absenteeism, and this has been particularly difficult since the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. Strong school breakfast programs can help combat that by getting kids to school so that they can get the nutritious meal that they need. Next slide, please. This slide looks at some participation in the average daily breakfast participation for all eligibility levels, free, reduced price, and paid for the last few years. You can see it's like a sideways lightning bolt, with really this peak participation happening in the 21-22 school year, when USDA had issued waivers allowing all schools to offer all students free school meals. When those waivers ended, breakfast and lunch participation plummeted. But in the 23-24 school year, which is the last full year we have data for, we saw this rise, this increase in breakfast participation, almost reaching that peak when those national waivers were available. Next slide, please. At FRAC, we have a ambitious but achievable goal of 70%. And I'll get into that in the next slides. But what we're talking about is what percentage of children who qualify and participate in the school lunch program at a free and reduced price rate also participate in school breakfast. And you can see on this slide here in the 23-24 school year, it was about 58%. There was a little more than 15 million children participating in school breakfast every single day. and a little more than 29 million children who participated in school lunch. Let's look at that percentage again. Next slide. So again, FRAC's goal, the national benchmark that we are setting, is that 70 children from households with low incomes participate in school breakfast for every 100 that participate in school lunch. That gap between the free and reduced price breakfast and lunch eaters has been decreasing. We're at a national average about 58%. Can you advance, Steve? Thank you. We do a calculation at FRAC that estimates federal reimbursement. In the 23-24 school year, there were 2 states and the District of Columbia, so West Virginia and New Mexico and Washington, D.C., that met this national benchmark. All of the rest fell a little short. If every state and Washington, D.C. met that 70% benchmark, states would bring in an additional $754 million in federal reimbursement. Next slide, please. But there are a variety of reasons why schools cannot implement breakfast after the bell models, or the barriers they may have to their operation, as well as barriers that prevent the individual student from accessing school breakfast. And I think it's important that we look at barriers both to the student and then as well to the school and the operation, because they can be different at times. When you think about a traditional breakfast model, it is very often offered before the start of the school day. So breakfast is served before kids get to school, forcing children to have to arrive to school early. It's often served in the cafeteria, far away from classrooms or where kids congregate, and there's a cost associated with participating. All of this can create a stigma around breakfast participation. Children don't want to be identified as having to need school breakfast. And so they will oftentimes not participate, even if they are eligible for free and reduced price breakfast, unless their peers are also participating. There's barriers to the operation itself. We know that food and nutrition service directors, they don't always get to make all the decisions in a school, right? Oftentimes it's the principal, it's the administrator, it's the superintendent, it's the board of ed members who are deciding whether or not breakfast is allowed to be served in the classroom, if food is allowed to come out of the cafeteria. And so breakfast really needs the support of the entire school community to become the robust program that brings all of those benefits to the students. School nutrition departments are also facing labor challenges, increased labor costs, as well as labor staffing shortages. Menu availability, children are very into what they eat. They want it to be culturally responsive. They want it to be hip and trending. And many public school systems across the country are facing decreasing enrollment, all which could impact breakfast. Next slide, please. But we know that there's 2 ingredients to the winning breakfast recipe, and that is free breakfast, offering school breakfast to all children at no charge, and breakfast after the bell. Breakfast after the bell is a model, or multiple models rather, where schools are bringing breakfast into classrooms and serving it after the start of the school day. These 2 components really combat those majority of barriers that we discussed previously. So let's get into it a little bit. There are a few ways that schools might offer free breakfast to all students. They can do that on their own and cover the costs. They can do a variety of different provisions, but I'm going to touch on 2 of the most common or most popular ways right now. The first is the Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP. CEP is an option for high poverty schools that allows them to offer all students free breakfast and lunch. If you're unfamiliar with this program and you want to learn more, please reach out. We have a ton of resources on it, and we have a ton of webinars recorded that I can direct you to. But CEP adoption has really grown tremendously over the last decade. And last school year, 2024-25, over 50% of schools that operate the National School Lunch Program use CEP to offer free breakfast and lunch to all students. Next slide. There's also been tremendous momentum behind healthy school meals for all. Really, since the end of those pandemic era waivers, states, communities, schools have embraced the idea that children need access to nutritious food during the school day. Children cannot learn on an empty stomach. And so we currently have 9 states nationwide that have passed Healthy School Meals for All policy, bringing that benefit of free school meals to all of their students. There additionally are 3 states and DC, one of whom you'll hear from in a bit, that have passed universal free breakfast policies. So school breakfast is free to all students in their state. And then you can see here on this map, all of those states that are in that golden yellow color, they have started to introduce healthy school meals for all legislation. They have formed coalitions, and they are really working towards bringing the benefits of free school meals to all of their students. Next slide, please. So when we talk about that other key ingredient that creates a winning breakfast recipe, this is really it. This is really the key to increase breakfast access. Free breakfast alone won't do it. We need to serve breakfast after the start of the school day, and we need to allow children to eat it in community with their peers in their classroom. There's a variety of ways that schools are doing this, but these are the 3 common models we often hear about: breakfast in the classroom, grab and go, second chance. And these models all share those same characteristics. Children have access to school breakfast after the start of their school day, so they no longer have to get to school early to participate. And they can eat breakfast in their classroom with their peers. And sometimes their teachers also participate. And this really creates this culture that is around this creates a culture around the importance of school breakfast, and it sends a message to students that we care. We care about your nutrition and your health and your ability to succeed. Next slide, please. This statistic came from a USDA email from a number of years ago, but it talks about really that importance of offering breakfast in the classroom, and says over 40% of students who have never participated in school breakfast would do so if eating in the classroom was an option. And I know this is true for my own child. My son started kindergarten last year, and mornings are chaotic. I had one child going to pre-K at one school, one child going to kindergarten at another school. It was crazy. And it was the first week of school, and we're running out the door. And I said to my son, "You didn't eat breakfast." His entire breakfast plate was still on the kitchen counter, untouched. And my child has always been one of those kids where he wakes up and he has a glass of milk, but then it's 2 to 3 hours before his appetite really kicks in and he gets hungry. Well, he wakes up at 6:30 and school starts at 9:30, so he's going to start to get hungry right as he needs to go to class. So I got nervous and I said, "Dex, what are you going to do? You haven't eaten anything and lunch is hours from now and you're not going to be able to concentrate." And he said, "Mom, it's okay. I'll get breakfast at school." And thankfully, his school is a breakfast in the classroom school. So he knows that every day, whether he eats at home or whether he doesn't have time to, because mornings are chaotic, he can get a fruit, a milk, and an entree right in his classroom, and he can eat it with his peers and his classmates and his friends right as they're doing morning announcements. And I am so grateful for that because it definitely eases that morning stress. Next slide, please. Oh, great. So now we're going to introduce Katie again. Katie's going to come up and talk about the ever-evolving nutrition standards around school breakfast. Take it away, Katie.
Thanks, Sarah. And I can definitely relate. My daughter also participates in the school feeding programs, and what a relief to take that burden of preparing meal prep at home and also rely on the schools for it. And it's because we know that the nutrition is there, the value is there, and so appreciate the work everyone on this call does every single day. And with that, my name is Katie Bombeck. I'm a registered dietitian and school nutrition specialist, and I serve as Vice President of Nutrition Affairs for National Dairy Council. I'm very proud to represent America's dairy farmers, and I've spent the last 17 years of my career working in the school nutrition field. And I'm thrilled to be here today to discuss the evolving school nutrition standards and also share some resources that not only align with these future standards, but also help create excitement and encourage student participation in school breakfast programs. We want to go to the next slide to dive into the regulatory aspect. It was back in 2024 when USDA released a final rule that was titled Child Nutrition Programs, Meal Patterns Consistent with the 2020-2025 Dietary Guidelines for Americans. And while the rulemaking was effective July 1st, 2024, USDA is gradually phasing in these required changes over time. And today I'm going to focus on 3 specific provisions around school breakfast: added sugars, sodium, and also meat alternates. To start with added sugars, starting this school year 25-26, there are for the first time some product-specific sugar limits on cereal, along with flavored milk and yogurt. And then beginning in school year 27-28, so a few years down the road, we'll see stricter overall added sugar standards, where added sugars will be limited to less than 10% of total calories across the week in both school breakfast and in school lunch. Regarding sodium, at the same time, a couple years down the road in school year 27-28, there will be a 15% reduction in sodium levels at lunch, and also a 10% reduction of sodium levels at the breakfast program based on their current levels. And then lastly, beginning in school year 24-25, which was last year, schools can offer grains, meat alts, or a combination of both at breakfast. This removed the requirement to offer 1 ounce equivalent of grains each day. So this does give schools more freedom to feature more protein options through the breakfast program. If you go to the next slide, as a dairy community, we've been committed to supporting schools as they navigate these evolving school nutrition standards in this landscape. And that commitment inspired our latest initiative, which we're calling Smart Swaps. Smart Swaps was led by National Dairy Council in partnership with our local dairy councils, and it was created to help address the real challenges that schools are facing as they work to meet these evolving standards. Based on USDA data that they showed, most school breakfast menus do not yet meet the upcoming benchmarks for added sugars across the weekly menu. So that means schools will need to adjust recipes and menus in the coming years to stay compliant. And that's why Smart Swaps focuses on school breakfast to help address that specific challenge. And the initiative includes 3 key areas of focus: breakfast recipes, along with sample breakfast menus, and culinary and educational training materials, all designed to help implement practical, compliant, and student-approved and underlying student-approved meal solutions. We know it's not healthy unless they eat it. And again, here are the 3 turnkey solutions that I kind of outlined, but we're encouraging schools to take a look at their recipes. We know we're going to be needing to decrease the amount of added sugars and sodium in recipes, and swapping out some of our current recipes with those newer versions that are hopefully kid tested and also kid approved. Refreshing some of your breakfast menus to include more protein options as an entree. We know if you include more protein at breakfast, it does help decrease your total calories from added sugars, which could help you meet those standards. And also pair these updates with some educational resources and training to help support the ease and effective implementation. And this initiative, Smart Swaps, is all about helping schools make smarter, not harder adjustments that are small yet achievable to help preserve flavor, to help preserve that nutrition and also student appeal while meeting these new standards. And on the next slide, you'll see we started this initiative by focusing on breakfast recipes. Our team reviewed existing school breakfast offerings and identified what are those student favorites and what are those recipes that we need to work to reduce those added sugars and sodiums while maintaining that taste, the good nutrition, and also the practicality of schools. We know you're limited on time, so it has to work for student acceptance, but also behind the scenes as far as production. So with this work, we developed, we updated 15 of our existing breakfast recipes that have been in market and we know are student favorites. So we updated them to align with the new standards. And then we created 10 brand new recipes that are inspired by current food trends and designed to help fill some of those menu gaps that we're seeing and identifying across the US. And then lastly, to make sure that these recipes really connected with students, we partnered with our state and regional dairy council teams to run taste tests across the country. And so we did taste tests with more than 2,500 students nationwide to make sure that we were hitting the mark on some of these recipes that we created. And if you go to the next slide, you can see that in total right now, we have 25 new or updated standardized recipes that schools can easily add to their breakfast menus. And some recipes include smoothies. We know smoothies are incredibly popular with students, and they're also great in that smoothies help increase consumption of dairy, of fruits and vegetables, which we know are all under consumed food groups. So helping children come closer to meeting their nutrient requirements. And one of our most popular smoothies at the moment is a cherry lime smoothie bowl, which is one that tested really well in schools. We also have a slew of hot entrees, like a breakfast quesadilla, Southwest frittata, a breakfast potato bowl, and even a breakfast mac and cheese. Again, these all tested very well with students, and then also several cold or portable options. We know grab and go is a big program, so wanted to ensure that grab and go options were there for schools who are implementing those types of programs. And again, each recipe was carefully crafted to balance nutrition, taste, but also that operational feasibility to ensure that they can be utilized within the school meal program. And on the next slide, as mentioned earlier, we started with recipes and then we moved to sample menu creation. And because every school operates differently, we created 3 distinct menu types to meet schools where they are as far as operational needs. The one I'm showing you here is our speed scratch menu. You can see here that this is week 1. We actually did 2 weeks of a menu, but we have at the top a short explanation of the evolving nutrition standards. On the left, we talk about what is speed scratch and where does it work best. And then each menu includes 2 entree items. We have a hot entree and a cold option. We have a fruit selection, and we have a variety of milk offerings. And then you can see at the bottom, we also used USDA approved nutrient analysis software to do our analysis because we want to ensure that we're meeting these benchmarks. And how do you know unless you're doing a nutrient analysis on your menu? So we factored in take rates to determine our weekly nutrient values for grades K-8 and 9 through 12. And then we showcased here the calories, saturated fat, added sugars, and sodium coming from these menus. And if you go to the next slide, you can see this is week 2 of our 2-week cycle that we did for speed scratch. It looks very similar, but on the right side, we added some menu efficiency tips for speed scratch specifically, and also some some tips for keeping milk cold. We know kids like cold milk, so that's something we wanted to elevate there. And then if you go to the next slide, I did mention we created 3 distinct menus. Speed scratch was one, but also we wanted to, again, provide options to schools who have different types of meal service. So we did a 2-week sample menus with grab and go, and also a 2-week menu with heat and serve. So to recap, school nutrition standards are evolving, and schools will likely need to adjust their breakfast menus in the coming years to comply with both the added sugar and also some lower sodium standards that go into effect in school year 27-28. And with that, I think I'm turning it back over to Erin to kick off our panel discussion.
Thanks, Katie. I always love seeing all the great work you guys are doing and the partnership that you bring to schools to really help them and meet them where they're at. So now I'm going to invite all of our panelists to kind of come off mute, come off camera. This is what we're here today. It's really just to have a discussion about school breakfast from a variety of different breakfast champions. And so I wanted to start, as I was thinking about this webinar and reflecting about my own time in schools, which was not that long ago. I have very distinct memories of lunch. Like, I remember we would get these tickets, and each ticket had a different color, whether you were free, reduced price, or paid, even though in elementary school, I didn't always know what those colors meant, but you definitely knew there was a hierarchy at play there. I remember what was offered for lunch, but I really don't remember school breakfast. And there was a breakfast program. I was born in the early 80s, so I went to school in the late 80s and 90s. There was a breakfast program, but it wasn't what we see today. For the last 15 plus years, I've gone around the country and have worked with schools and been a nutrition operator myself and seen a tremendous variety in school breakfast, from that traditional model where maybe only a few kids participate every day to that really robust model, or breakfast is served in the classroom, teachers are participating, the principals say in the menu over the announcement, and every child is eating school breakfast. So Holly, I wanted to start with you being our resident food service director here on the call. And can you tell us what breakfast looks like in Wood County, West Virginia?
Breakfast in Wood County is different in every school. It's what works for the school, but just like you talked about earlier, we have our challenges with principals. We have anywhere from a grab and go system to breakfast in the classroom to eat in the cafeteria. And I'll also talk a little bit about, I've been playing with a breakfast program called Build a Better Breakfast, where it's taken off the Starbucks, especially those middle school kids love it. It's taken from that Starbucks, place your order, pick up your order the next day, and you get to go. So we've started that. I'm going to be introducing that to 2 additional middle schools coming up in the winter after January, when I have a student dietitian. Student intern is going to help me with that. But it just differs in every school. We are shy of 11,000 students in our county. We are dropping our numbers every year. We're having to close our schools because our numbers are dropping. We are 100% CEP, so all students in Wood County eats breakfast at no charge and has lunch at no charge. I run about a 50, my goal is to get up to 60% during, right after COVID. I was very high in breakfast participation, but I had a lot of breakfast in the classroom after COVID, and those are slowly dropping off, even though the teachers love them. And I've had schools tell me, oh, we love this, but then you have a new principal comes in and they're like, well, we don't want that in the classroom anymore, even though they see the test scores increase. They see the students are eating as a group. We have, right now, I'm running about 45% participation across the board. And where I see my challenges are my middle schools and my high schools. High schools, I'm looking at vending machines, especially that for those students that are tardy. When they come in, the vending machine is going to be right there. They can get their breakfast and go to the classroom. So I try anything when I'm out and about in airports, in conference centers, in, anywhere. I look to see what are other restaurants, what is happening in that industry that these students may be seeing that I can bring back.
Holly,
So,
I think you just said so, you shared so much key things there. I love it. So first of all, kudos to you. That is a tremendous amount of work. You are literally always working, right? If you're always
yes,
watching
I'm
everything.
watching, I'm taking
Always.
pictures.
We have seen tremendous success with vending machines. Caitlin Lazarski up in Pine Bush Central School District in New York was on one of our calls and talked about how vending breakfast worked for her, particularly in secondary schools. And I think you bring up a really great point that we see breakfast participation drop in middle and high schools, right? And we
Yes.
know this. And so your initiatives around that Starbucks model, I can't wait to hear how that rolls out and video and feature that. But there was a question that came in through the Q&A from the audience, and I'm going to ask it now because I think it relates to what you were saying. So Megan asks, what would you say to schools who want to choose, say, grab and go, as opposed to breakfast in the classroom? So when you have those principals who want you to switch back to like a traditional model, like what are some messaging things that work? And then after Holly answers, if anyone else has some tips, please jump in.
I think when I look at my grab and go, we have in different schools, different methods of the grab and go. In one school I was at last week, the students literally, they start in the gym and they literally walk to the cafeteria and pick up a grab and go bag and then walk to their classroom. So in a way, that is a breakfast in the classroom, but the students, if they don't want it, they don't pick it up. We also have in one of my schools where the students, when they come through the front door, the grab and goes are at the front door, they pick it up and they go. They eat it in the cafeteria. They may come to the gym and eat it. So they're having that breakfast, not so much a traditional cafeteria or in the classroom, but the opportunity is there for them to eat it anywhere. So, I think showing principals that by introducing breakfast to your students, you're going to get better grades, better attendance is two things to really touch on, because you got to know the love language, as I call it, with your principals and with your superintendent. And when you start talking about better test scores, that's a love language. When you talk about attendance, that's a love language for us. Those two words is sort of where I hit on with my principals and my superintendent. And I love whenever they come to me during test taking time is, I need snacks. And I say, no, you don't. You need to feed your kids breakfast. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're like, oh, let them all eat breakfast and it's better. And you don't have to pay for snacks then. And all of a sudden that week, every kid's eating breakfast. Well, do it year round. Right. So, I think you just got to, when you're talking to your principals and as well as your cafeteria manager and your cooks, know what they want to hear, and we can provide that as child nutrition.
Yeah, and I think also really getting at what is what are they against specifically? What are they worried about? And sometimes, breakfast in the classroom where a food and nutrition service department is delivering breakfast. I used to do this, delivering breakfast to every classroom and a bin is very labor intensive. And so we have to respect that right now that can also be a challenge. And school nutrition departments, you don't need to go from breakfast in the classroom back to a traditional model. You can utilize some of these other approaches, a second chance breakfast, a grab and go, the vending machines, and it can all look differently. You really need to walk around the school and identify, where are kids congregating? Where are they entering in? Where are teachers flowing? What is my staffing levels? And make it unique to each school, as opposed to this like blanket breakfast in the classroom, second chance. Like those are just the models and terminology we use, but they look so different. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in and have a comment about.
And also, you said something about the teachers, when you talk to them, what are they against? What I found out is I talked to them, syrup. I mean, they were against syrup. So I made sure everything had a flavor to it. Trash. I made sure, and sanitizer wipes. I made sure they all had sanitizer wipes. I tried to give them what was needed to take away their barriers, so they weren't afraid of that.
Great, thank you. Speaking of barriers, we talked about cost as a barrier, and Patty, we know that Arkansas somewhat recently, passed a universal free breakfast policy. So can you tell us a little bit more about your state legislation?
Well, it was a long time in the making. And so I'll give you a little history lesson on how we got there. It started back in 2010 when the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance became the No Kid Hungry campaign lead partner in Arkansas. And our lead task and key goal was to improve breakfast participation. And we were sitting at about, looked like your earlier statistics, at about around 50% of those free reduced lunch eaters were also eating breakfast. So we wanted to move up, slide up that scale. And that began with a lot of breakfast after the bell outreach, using all of these benefits that have been mentioned, improved attendance, improved attention in the classroom, better outcomes in the classroom overall. You had to overcome those naysayers with your love language, as Holly mentioned. Talk to whether it's the principal, the superintendent, the teacher, the local legislator, and whomever was hesitant, overcome those barriers, answer what their questions are, tell them about increased participation means increased reimbursement, means your school nutrition budget goes up. And we had an excellent, I have to give full credit to Vivian Nicholson, who's a former nutrition director in a small district in Arkansas, who became our breakfast director and had thousands of conversations with the school districts across the state. And over the time, they came on board, and those naysayers became our best advocates in the long run. And we moved up that scale and had more and more participation, more and more reimbursement. We had some legislative help along the way. We had extra grants through an Arkansas Meals for Achievement program for a couple of years. We had a tweak in some administrative language to improve CEP adoption. And then when back in 22, right before Governor Sarah Sanders won that election, we had a discussion with her about prioritizing child nutrition solutions, and she was on board with that. In 2023, we passed a reduced price meal copay bill that was kind of run under the radar by two of our favorite senators. And that was passed to our surprise with overwhelming support, and it laid the groundwork for universal free breakfast in the 2025 legislative session. And we were again surprised by the governor adding that to her legislative package and coming out in full support of that legislation. So we were able to pass our dream goal of having universal free breakfast that we established as a dream 15 years ago, basically, and it came to fruition. So through patience and persistence, I must say. And the result, at least anecdotally, we know that participation has gone up to every school nutrition director we've talked to. They have come back to us saying, hey, what about a grant for breakfast after the bell after all? Or we gave up breakfast in the classroom. Can we go back to it? Can we get some thermal bags to support that meal delivery or whatever the needs are? And so we're stepping up, excuse me, to handle those questions and concerns and overcome those barriers so we can keep moving ahead.
Because this law just went into effect this school year, right?
Right.
Just
So
this
we've
school
just
year.
now, since mid-August, been offering free breakfast to all students. So that's all 475,000 or so Arkansas students who now are eligible for a free breakfast.
I think
So
that's fantastic. And I think
free
the
lunch
way that
is our new dream goal.
well, that's the next step, right? And I think you've proven that is a stepwise process, right? No one goes from just the federal regulations to healthy school meals for all. All states pass these stepwise policies. They they eliminate the reduced price copay. They expand free meal eligibility. They implement universal free breakfast. They subsidize CEP, and then they go healthy school meals for all, right? And it's really garnering that support that you guys have done for the last 15 years and really building that coalition. And the other thing that really stood out to me, Patty, that you said was Vivian, having been a school nutrition director, able to speak school nutrition directors, as Holly would say, love language.
Yes.
And how important it is for us to connect and form these partnerships between the same entities, linking school nutrition directors with school nutrition directors, so peer learning, linking principals and superintendents with principals and superintendents, or educators with educators, so because they speak each other's language and there's a mutual understanding and respect that is already there that you don't need to gain or earn before you walk in the door. So really having a breakfast coalition that is varied through all of the components of a school system and a community and all of the health partners that support the child, because this is all about supporting our children. Jessica made a comment in the chat about incorporating breakfast after the bell into school wellness policies. And I love this comment, because to all what you've been saying is, you can have a really supportive principal, and then that principal may become the superintendent, or he or she or they may retire, and you get somebody else in who doesn't know about breakfast. And then that breakfast program could kind of fall apart, or you could face some struggles. But if you have it in board policy, I would even go above wellness policy and say you have it in board policy. It's almost like you get that little, like, I know it's challenging. I know we're gonna have to go through some changes. Unfortunately, this is the policy. And you almost kind of pass the buck somewhat a little bit. And it has, that teeth there to taste that. I don't know, Katie, if you were gonna come out and comment on that at all, or.
Well, I was going to add the discussion here around participation dropping in secondary schools, your middles and your high schools. Aaron, I kind of forgot that we collaborated and worked together earlier this year, just in February. FRAC released a report around supporting academic success with school breakfast, specific guide for secondary school principals. And so that was the whole premise, is how do we reach and help increase participation where we know it's dropping. And so I think, Erin, maybe including that resource as a follow-up or a link in the chat may be a good one to revisit following this discussion.
Absolutely, Katie. I actually have an image of it in our, when we get to resources at the end, I do highlight it. And it will be, anyone who registered for the webinar will get a follow-up email that has a link to the recording, the slides, and some of these resources that we are identifying for you. Oh, thanks, Steve. They're so quick on it. Steve also dropped the link in the chat. Because there really is this drop off in secondary schools, and there's a variety of reasons why that might be. And something that, you know, Katie, as we transition to talk to you about the nutrition that you shared, you know, I think about, as a dietitian, as another dietitian, there's so much interest in nutrition, right? Social media and teenagers and children and their parents and the teachers and like everybody is very interested in nutrition, whether it's accurate nutrition information or whether it's trendy nutrition information, or maybe it's both. But when I worked in schools and I worked in food service operations, I remember we introduced the parfait, the breakfast parfait. And what a difference it was, whether we served it like in a bowl, there's like a generic bowl, or if we served it in like the see-through cup with a dome lid where you can see the layers, and how popular that was with high schoolers particularly, and middle schoolers particularly. We had done like a deconstructed parfait prior with you got the yogurt and the granola and like the dried fruit separately, but actually making the component and doing the display was so much more appealing, obviously. So Katie, in your experience, you know, what is really speaking to families and children? What are they interested in nutrition wise? What cool recipes have you seen out there besides the ones you've already shown us?
Yeah, well, I'll start with just saying there's an incredible amount of misinformation when it comes to nutrition. I read a statistic recently that only 2% of the nutrition information shared on TikTok is accurate. And so that just goes to show that the vast amount of inaccuracies that are out there, and those challenges that schools face as parents come to them with questions or maybe just not understanding the programs. But we can feel really confident as school nutrition professionals because we know that school meals and school breakfast have improved significantly just the past 15 years. We know that the Healthy Eating Index score, we call it the HEI. It's a scoring system that assesses basically the nutritional quality of a meal, and it ranges from 0 to 100. And for school breakfast, back in 2009, we were at a 50 out of 100. Move forward to 2014, which is the last time they did an analysis on it, we went up to 71, from 50 to 71. And that is a statistically significant increase and something that we should be proud of. And a lot of that is due to the changes through the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. But we know, you know, breakfast is set by regulations through the USDA, which is based on the dietary guidelines for Americans. We have calorie ranges, we have limits on saturated fat, sodium, and now added sugar. As mentioned earlier, we have upcoming standards that are going to be continuing to change. We're going to be continuing to decrease the amount of the added sugars on menus, along with sodium. And we now have more flexibility to provide more protein options at breakfast. So there's a lot of great things that are evolving that we're doing that we can feel really proud of through the school meal programs. And it's been talked about already, but just the importance also of nutrition in school meals to academic performance is something that we cannot shout out enough. And, you know, we should feel really proud about it as well. Students who participate in school meals, they perform better in schools. They have better grades, better attendance, better behavior. And also we know that they have improved nutrition. They have better vitamin intake. So having a school breakfast helps children come closer to meeting their nutrient recommendations, which helps them in growth and development, also again in academic performance. So a lot of things to be proud of on what we put out on the tray and what we're serving. Regarding popular breakfast items, parfaits are a big one. Also, when we were doing our sampling of our new recipes, our top performing recipe was a cherry lime smoothie bowl. And I think it's just 4 ingredients. That's all. It's yogurt, frozen cherries, lime juice, blended with granola on top. So it's super simple, but I think it plays off of that very popular cherry lime trend that we're seeing that kids are really into. If you go to local restaurants, like cherry lime drinks are all over the place. So it really playing into that trendy aspect, but also it's fresh, it's easy to grab and go. It really caters to student preferences. And so I think finding things that students are really interested in and ways to keep it fresh. And, you know, just because you're using frozen cherries in this ingredient, also what's another recipe you can use frozen cherries and to be able to maximize those ingredients. So you're not just bringing in one ingredient for one recipe, but a lot of fun recipes, trends that you can tap into to help engage your students and keep them active in the program.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it's so important. I love that you guys have the operator's viewpoint always in mind too. So I'm looking at Holly, like if I could have a breakfast item that I could also cycle into like an after school supper or snack item, like it was more likely for me to menu that item, right? And if my staff knew how to create it, we would buy the same quantities of food, would buy the same items. Holly, what are you seeing as being like popular items right now amongst your students?
We tried the smoothies, which my middle school, high school loves them. Elementary, no. I was like, oh my gosh, everybody else likes them. Why can't you like them? But whenever I have already tried my Build a Better Breakfast program in one of my middle schools, and we did see an increase in participation. So that's why I'm bringing it to the other two. And we actually had the students choose they could choose between 5 different menu items. One of them was a smoothie, which was very popular with the students. But what I was very surprised about was my students are really liking a protein source. They love the turkey sausage, egg cheese McMuffins or muffins with English muffins. Those have really become popular. Some schools I'm having to watch, if it's in a package, their perception is it's not fresh. So my cooks were taking it out of the package just to see what would happen, and the kids were picking it up then. That perception of is it fresh was very much is in their mindset. But we make all of our muffins from scratch this year.
Wow.
And we are making a oatmeal muffin that is the kids love it. And it is a very good muffin. But all of our muffins this year, just to work with that sugar level, are all from scratch. We're trying anything with them. We're throwing it out. I've got a note, cherry limeade. I've got a note for that to pull it and to try it to see what happens. Anything with the protein is what I'm seeing more. My middle school and my high school kids are really liking. My middle school kids still are the pancakes, the parfaits. What we did with my elementary, we just changed one of the smoothies to the yogurt with the blueberry topping. It's a smoothie, it's just not blended. I'm like, same thing. And we're seeing the kids like it better than the smoothie on the elementary level. So I'm seeing a lot of different items, but I do see a lot of the protein rich items being accepted. But I'm hearing from my teachers as I go into the schools, oh, y'all giving us kids a lot more protein to get their day started right. So they're probably telling the kids this. So if your teachers and whoever is out there helping the kids are accepting it, that perception is going to be there and they're going to accept it.
I couldn't agree more. I think protein is very trendy right now.
Yes, it is very trendy.
It's very trendy. And I also agree, if you can have that teacher model, if that teacher also participates in school breakfast and they're also invested in it, that's a leader to those children, right? If you have the coaches and, the music teachers and the PE teachers talk about the importance and the healthfulness and really make that cafeteria to classroom connection, right? I always say school meals is a living textbook, right? Like I'm a dietitian. But school meals, particularly school lunch, really taught me how to make dinner for my own kids. Because I'm thinking, do I have the protein? Do I have the grain? Do I have a vegetable? Is it a different color than I offered yesterday? Do I have the milk? And the same thing for when I'm making breakfast at home. Do I have the components, right? And that teaches children how to make a meal. When they see that their breakfast meal has a whole grain or a lean protein, a glass of milk, and a fruit, when they leave school, they know how to combine that meal. So I really think it's such, we are nourishing children, but it's also education. We're in an education environment, and we're also teaching children how to create a healthy meal, what a healthy meal looks like, and why it's important. And the more we can integrate that into other classrooms and other academic areas, I think the stronger that message becomes.
Yes.
So I know we're kind of running out of time here, but I did just want to touch on one last topic quickly for anyone who wants to jump in. We have seen a lot of articles over the last few months as we've dealt with the government shutdown of schools who have always been community centers, and they've always been community hubs, really stepping up and expanding nutrition operations. So I've seen a lot of articles talking about schools implementing after-school supper programs or those type of programs to really kind of ensure that their community has access to the nutrition they need. I want to, Patty, Holly, what do you think about this, and what role does breakfast play? Like, do you see schools moving to breakfast after the bell to kind of help support families who may be struggling for the first time? Some of them may be struggling for the first time.
Yeah, I think so. There was a lesson that, and a silver lining to the pandemic, that I think taught the nutrition teams all around the state to understand what they could do differently, and they could take meals to families, and it doesn't have to be just in the cafeteria at a certain set time. So I think that has them thinking more broadly about how can we overcome some of these difficulties they're facing. You've got labor shortages and high cost of food, and we know that the families are experiencing that too. So how can they reach out and add new options? And in Arkansas, we were pleased to adopt summer EBT. That was a new nutrition source, and it's a huge opportunity for those families, and as well as to continue that with the summer and after school meal options, and summer meals in rural areas, and new delivery methods that nutrition directors learned during the pandemic can be used there too. So it's thinking of all those options and making sure families come in and complete those meal applications at the beginning of the school year, and knowing that that accurate count about the free reduced population in the district applies to later determining CEP eligibility and summer EBT eligibility and everything else. So it's kind of thinking on the broader aspects.
I agree. And to that point, I just want to say, Holly, thank you, because
Thank
you are
you.
doing this work. You are serving your community, and it is not easy, as you demonstrated today, and it is definitely a 24/7 type of job. So I want to kind of wrap up with some resources, both from National Dairy Council as well as FRAC. And I know there is a question in the chat here, Tony, about he's asking about cost estimates to do universal breakfast or healthy school meals for all. I'm going to refer you to a resource that we have at FRAC. It can vary, and it can get very nuanced and very, very detailed. But if you want to reach out through email, Tony, I'm more than happy to help. Or Patty, if you don't mind, we can share your emails, how Arkansas came up with some cost estimates or the processes that you went through. So please feel free. I will drop my email in the chat, and then I will pass it over to Katie to share some of the National Dairy Council resources.
Thanks, Erin. With our Smart Swaps initiative, we have several resources I just wanted to elevate and highlight. The first one is around recipes. So knowing schools are very busy, we took the time to develop some turnkey resources for schools and implementing some of these new recipes. So on the left, you'll see each of the 25 new recipes have a standardized recipe card, which includes all the information you need from prep time, cook time, portion sizes, meal pattern contributions. even allergen information, nutrition information, etc. And then in the middle, we also did step-by-step visual instructions for training your staff and how to prepare the recipe. And on the right, you see we also did some videos, which is a quick 1-minute video on how to prepare the document or the recipe. And those, both the how-to videos and the step-by-step visual guides, are especially valuable for staff who are maybe visual learners or whose first language isn't English. So we found those beneficial in those areas. And if you go to the next slide, we did mention we have some of those training videos, but we are going to be adding more throughout this year. So that is our commitment, and to Smart Swaps and also to help schools, we are going to continue building this resource repository. So please continue to come and continue to check it out. And if we go to the next slide, beyond Smart Swaps, we have additional resources as well. We have some infographics specifically about get the facts about school breakfast, and really consumer-friendly infographics around how to talk about the benefits of school meals and some of the research to support them. Also some information around flavored milk and the role of flavored milk in school meal programs, and some downloadable posters. We know it's always nice to brighten up your service line or provide a little bit of nutrition education to students as they're coming through the lines. We also do have some downloadable posters, or even images for digital menu boards to make them pop a bit more. And then on the last side, I do want to call out our regional and local dairy councils. There are 16 dairy councils across the United States who really are, those boots on the ground and have those local relationships. And if you don't have someone to reach out to locally, I do suggest you visit the link on the site, and you can connect with your local dairy council to get some more regional resources along with some of the national resources we presented today. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Erin to go over some FRAC resources and close us out.
Thanks, Katie. I'm going to echo those. Regional dairy councils are really fantastic. I've worked with them on every level, from USDA to the state agency when I worked at a state agency to an operator. And I continue to partner with them today to promote the benefits of school breakfast. So they're very helpful and knowledgeable, and they're there to assist you in increasing breakfast participation. All right, Steve, let's take it to FRAC slides. So these are links to our websites. We have a variety of resources available for you. I'm highlighting here our breakfast site, our CEP community eligibility provision site, and our Healthy School Meals for All site. Next slide. So all of the data that I talked about in the beginning of this webinar, where we looked at school meal participation and broke it out by free and reduced price eligibility, that comes from our annual report called the Reach a School Breakfast and Lunch. That is available on our website for you to take a look at. And it looks at trends, usually comparing 2 years at a time. We often release these in March to celebrate National School Breakfast Week. If you advance, Steve, I'll also show you some of our research briefs. So I highlighted the overall talking points that research has correlated school breakfast to, that learning and health outcomes. Click advance next, Steve. Thanks. These briefs are also available on our website, and they really just identify the specific studies if you want to kind of do a deeper dive into the research and what it says specifically around school breakfast and students' health and learning. Next slide, please. As we mentioned, engaging educators, principals, administrators is so key to all of this work. It is a focus of FRAC's over the next years, and Katie kind of teed this up perfectly. The resource you see at the front of your screen, we just worked with National Dairy to develop. We released earlier this calendar year, and it's a guide specifically for secondary school principals. It has testimonials from other middle and high school principals on what breakfast and increasing breakfast has done for their community and their students, different ways that school principals can get engaged, can form teams, talks about community eligibility, talks about the different provisions, it talks about breakfast after the bell. So really looking to engage educators on the importance of this. Next slide, please. Tony, this is the guide I mentioned earlier. This is an advocacy guide for any advocates out there looking to pass state policy on healthy school meals for all. We just released this in August, so take a look at that. It can help you think about cost estimates, what to include in state policy, how to form a coalition. Advance, please. We also have a variety of resources on the community eligibility provision itself. This is a very recent state fact sheet that looks at CEP adoption. And we also have tips and resources for school districts on how they might improve direct certification. And that takes us to a minute over. We thank you all for staying with us today. Thank you to my fantastic panel of breakfast champions. It's a pleasure to work with you continuously to improve students' access to this vital morning meal. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and reach out if you need anything. Thanks so much.